all here.
Baruch Hashem. So, good morning, good day to everyone. We're on page 396 in the Maamar, Liolom, Yehei Adam, Zohir B'tfilas Mincha, HaMincha. You know, the language of Liolom, Yehei Adam, is a very forceful language. It literally means Liolom, forever. Yehei Adam Zahir, man should be careful. The implication of the language is very forceful. In other words, don't forget this. Always remember this. Don't lose sight of this. That's the language. So it's a very, very authoritative, I'll use that word. It's a very authoritative language. The Rebbe doesn't speak about it, but just in thinking about it myself, it's not only, if you want to, this is the way I look at it. If you want to, daven mincha. If you don't want to, don't daven mincha. If you want to, be careful about mincha. If you don't want to, don't be careful. No, Liolom Yehei Adam means you better be careful. And why would the Chazal, why would the rabbis use such a language? I mean, the Torah is Torah's chesed. It's a Torah of kindness. Why would it use a forceful, authoritative language? And I believe the answer is in what the language is used for. What are we discussing? We're discussing Mincha. And as we're going to start seeing today in the Maamar, what Mincha is about, and on a spiritual level, and then later in the Maamar on a practical level. So, because we're talking here about something that is essential for a Jew's survival, therefore, we basically see this very powerful, authoritative language, Liolom Yehei Adam Zahir. Because you don't find that type of language in Chazal often. You don't. For example, the Gemara in Shabbos says, B'mai havi zayir tfei. Which mitzvah, this is a statement made by a sage regarding a certain, which mitzvah is he most careful about? Now that type of language is very mellow compared to the language here. Liolom Yehei Adam Zahir. Hey guy, you better always be careful. They both use the same word, Zahir. Careful. But it's the way you use the word careful, the before and after, that makes all the difference. So obviously, this is a special reason. There must be a special reason why the Chazal used this language. And again, I didn't see it in the Maamar here, and I'm not sure it's going to be here in the Maamar, but this is my own thinking. Yes.
Rabbi Dalfin, I just have to say, it was pointed out to me some time ago, that Gemara in Shabbos that you just quoted about the which mitzvah your father most careful. So, Api Chasidis, it was taught to me by Uri Kaplun, that in Yerushalayim, the Api Chasidis, that Zahir, and that we read it, which mitzvah did your father, not was he careful, in which mitzvah did your father shine? Which was did he mamash, in other words, views like a very strong positive, positive energy. I just wanted to
right,
say
that. No, of course. Zahir, from the word Zohar, splendor, shine, bright, brilliant. So yeah, the Rebbe has sichas on this, which, since we're mentioning it, we'll take another moment, how important it is for every person to have their mitzvah. Their mitzvah in which they, throughout their lifetime, you saw a special love towards that mitzvah. And it's important to know this. Why? Because after 120, you want to do something for the soul of the person. If you know what their mitzvah that they emphasized was, it would be very worthwhile to continue that mitzvah for them. versus doing any mitzvah, which is good, of course. Every mitzvah is good for the neshama of a person who's left this world. But this mitzvah that Zahir, like you said, Moshe, that he in Yiddish we say the word kochzich, which means passionate about, cooks himself in over and over. He's like, very excited, Zahir. Okay, bottom of page 396. Basically, the first chapter was one long question. What do the Chazal mean when they say, be careful with davening Mincha? Why not Shachris? Why not Arvis? That's the question. But of course, in this style of Hasidus, it was elaborated upon. It opened up a whole door to us about this issue of understanding the Gemara alpi Pnimius HaTorah, Razin de Razin. Very interesting discussion. Now we go to the bottom, the second paragraph. To understand all of the above in man's service, in avodas ha'adam. Bisman tfilas hamincha. Gabe, do me a favor, put on your mute, please. Bisman tfilas hamincha is b'mishna shtei deis. Regarding the time of Mincha, there are two opinions in the Gemara. Rabbanon, the rabbis, with Rabbi Yehuda. Tfilas ha-mincha ad ha'erev. Rabbanon say you can daven Mincha till nightfall. With Rabbi Yehuda says ad plag ha-mincha until basically plag ha-mincha, which is an hour and a quarter before nightfall. The Rabbi Yehuda believes that tefillas can negate midim tiknu, top of 397. That the reason that prayers, that davening are in lieu of sacrifices. Which sacrifice? The tmidin, the carbon tamid, which was brought twice daily, in the morning and in the afternoon. Mincha hu neged tamid shel bein arbayim, and the carbon mincha it corresponds with the afternoon carbon tamid. Uzman akravis tamid shel bein arbayim u'teisha shos u'mechza. Until when could you bring the carbon tamid? Was 9.5 hours from the morning. V'nimtza plag ha-mincha shor revi'ah kaidem halayla. So, according to this, when is Plag HaMincha? An hour and a quarter before night. This is the opinion, of Rabbi Yehuda. But Rabbanan Savri, the Rabbanan, they say otherwise because they follow Rabbi Yossi Yerushalmi. What does Rabbi Yossi say in the Gemara Yerushalmi? The mincha neged katoiris. Not mincha is in lieu of sacrifices, but rather mincha is in lieu of the incense offerings known as katoiris. Shene'amad, as it says, tikoin tfilasi, I will prepare my prayers, my tefillah, ketores, with incense. The time to smoke incense is at Mincha time. So if you want to know when to get high, it's at Mincha's time, Ketores. Okay? It's so interesting. I just saw a letter someone sent me on the WhatsApp from 1977. Someone writes to the Rebbe, I saw this, I promise you. He says, is it all right to smoke marijuana? And the Rebbe says, well, I erased it already, I should have kept it. Surely not. 1977, not 1965. 1977. Anyway, and I think he was the questionnaire that was kind of like, can I use it for enhancing my service of Hashem? And the Rebbe said, surely not. This is not the approach. Anyway, but according to
Rabbi, you touched a little bit on the Ketoris. And
yes,
the possibility of it having some kind of effect. So, what for once and for all, can we say that there was smoking of the incense in order to elevate their avodah?
Well, I don't see that they were smoking the incense. They used the incense. Who says they were smoking the incense? I mean, look into the Torah. What does it say about the Ketoras? Does it say that we were eating the incense, smoking the incense? I don't believe it does. It says that you brought incense in a vessel, and you put a fire and you brought it to the altar. That's what it says. Now, whether the aroma of the incense gave you a high, could be. Anyway, let's continue.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I want to tell you, since we mentioned it, it's not just the incense, it's alcohol too. Hasidim for generations used alcohol as an enhancer to Avodas Hashem. So the Rebbe writes in Igros Kodesh in one of his volumes to certain Hasidim, the Rebbe writes, today we have the Torah of my father-in-law, his Hasidus, what we're learning. And the same high you get from the alcohol, you can get from the Maamar. Now he writes it. Now, Hasidim still use l'chaim at Farbrengens, but let's not lose sight of the Nakuda. The Nakuda is that, it's for a holy purpose and a godly purpose, and really not for your own self, advancement and ego. So whether it's it's a drug, or whether it's alcohol, if it's used just to pump yourself, it's inappropriate. Okay, let's continue. So he says, and as it's explained in the comments of Maimonides, Perek Daled Mehilchos Tefillah. Over there, he says you could look further and you'll see more details about prayer being substituted by Ketoris. V'nimtza, the Tefillas Mincha, what we understand from this Yerushalmi is that Mincha hu neged Ketoris, is in lieu of Ketoris. So the question now is, what's the difference? Bahafresh. Bein karbonis lektoris, or the difference between sacrifices and incense. Where was the place in the Beis Hamikdash where you brought the sacrifices on what's called upon the external altar, Mizbeach HaChitzon? Uktoires, conversely, incense was brought al Mizbeach HaPnimi, the smaller Mizbeach called the inner Mizbeach. You know why it was called the inner Mizbeach? Because it was in the Kodesh, right? There was the Shulchan, the Menorah, and the Mizbeach HaPnimi. Whereas the Mizbeach HaChitzon was outside, right? Okay. That's why it's called Chitzon, Mizbeach HaChitzon, outside of the Kodesh, and this was inside. Let's continue. However, according to both opinions, both Rabbanon and Rabbi Yehuda, everyone agrees that Mincha is before the sunset. Right? Because when we say till nightfall, right? Even the Rabbanon say till nightfall, we mean Shkiyas HaChama. Now, of course, we have a disagreement, what's Shkiyas HaChama? Is it the Rabbin Tam Shkia? But whatever your Shkiyas HaChama is, that's until when the Mincha goes. From this we understand that the Mincha Tefillah, the Mincha prayer, is associated with the movement of the sun. The Koydem Shkiyos Dafka, and it's associated with the movement of the sun as it is prior to its sunset. That's what we understand with this Gemara. What does this mean? To understand this further, so now Moshe is going into explaining to us what the sun is, right? Since Mincha time is associated with the sunset, according to everyone, Avi, So what does the sun represent in God, in God and in our avodah with Hashem? And he says, it says in Tehillim 84, in Iksiv, Ki shemesh u'mogen, for the sun and its shield, Hashem Elokim is Yudke Vovke and Elokim. V'isa b'sheicher toiv, we find in the Medrash called Sheicher Toiv. Yoni, we're on 397, about 10 lines down. Rabbi Chaim Dalfin Maamar, Rabbi Chaim Dalfin says, Meir keshemesh, the sun shines like the sun. Umeisich kemogen, Meir kashemesh, you have to shine like the sun. Umeisich, and you have to protect yourself kemogen, like a shield. What does that mean? Hine bashemesh yeshnei dvorim. In the sun you have two things. Ho'echad etzem hashemesh, you have the very ball, the sun. V'hasheni igul hashemesh, you have the circumference of the sun. Shehu hamogen v'nartek ela shel hashemesh, the circumference of the sun is the protective code and shield over the sun. V'hu anikra chama, and this is what we call the sun, chama. Now we go back to the verse in Tehillim, Ki shemesh u'mogim, for the sun and its shield, Hashem Elokim, is God, our God. And it means, Kishem hamogin v'nartik meisich u'master al mo'ir hashemesh, just as the shield and protective cover of the sun protects the sun, the essence, the more, the illuminary, the very sun, right? Because otherwise it would burn up the world. It's too intense. So it needs a shield, a circumference. When it comes to the holy names of Hashem, the supernal names, Kishem Hashem or Kishem Elikim, the name Yudke Vovke, the name Elokim, there's the similar operation. But the Shem Hashem, how is that? Because it's known that the Shem Hashem, Yudke Vovke, who Mekoyer Ha'oros, it's the source for lights, for energy. The Shem Elokim, the name of Elokim, who Mekoyer HaKelim, is the source for the vessels. The Hashem, the Yudke Vovke, who Gilui, it's revelation. The Elokim, and the name Elokim, who Helam is concealment. In other words, just as the sun must have a code and a shield to protect it, so that protected meaning in the sense it shouldn't burn us up, so too Yudke Vovke Yoni, being Gilui, revelation, needs Elokim to filter it. Otherwise, we would flip out. And that's why it needs to have Elokim in addition to Yudke Vovke. So now we understand the pasuk in Tehillim. Ki shemesh u'mogen, just as the sun has a shield, so too Hashem Elokim is the shield for Yudke Vovke. Good.
So it's a muggin, but it's also, can we also call it that it's melavush, that it's dressed up?
Yes, but right now he's not. I know what you're saying, and he's not speaking about it, so therefore I didn't mention it. In other words, what Gabe is saying is that there's also the aspect of Elokim, not only as a protection on Yudke Vovke, but a beneficiary that where Hashem enclosed itself in Elokim, and it's filtered through for our benefit. But maybe he'll say it soon, but he hasn't said that. That's why I didn't mention it. Yes, Hillel.
Earlier when we talked about the Shemesh, and it says Eagle Hashemesh?
Yes.
Is that the word?
Yes.
So you said that was the circumference. I was wondering if it also had any implication about the rotation.
Yeah, eagle means a circle. I mean,
right. Yeah, that's why I'm
maybe you're right. Maybe it means
the sun doesn't rotate. The earth rotates around the sun. Sun stays still. We used to think in the old days that the sun moved.
Well, that's an interesting thing that the Rebbe writes about, right? He says, that's really kind of, it depends on where you're holding, where your relativity is.
Right. The Rebbe, what Avi said is, the Rebbe and others who feel that way, but not everyone agrees. But it's interesting that you mentioned that the rotation. I'm not sure if it implies the rotation. I'll have to think about it and see if. Okay, let's go further. V'lochein Shem Hashem. Therefore, the Shem Hashem, the name Yud Kei Vav Kei, hu Mekoyer Ha'Oros. That is why it's the source of energy. Because Moshe, what is Hashem Gilui, and Yoni, what's Shem Elokim Mekoyer HaKelim, the source of the vessels, the restriction. It limits it. Why? Because it's like the cover on the sun, limiting the sun from being exposed fully. The Hakelim, now listen to this. The Hakelim, hey magbilim es ha'oros. You see why, Gabe? Because over here he's emphasizing the other aspect, not the aspect I believe that you were referring to. Right now he's emphasizing how Kalim are magbilim. They limit the oros, the energy. Umalimim alehem. And they conceal the oros. Now comes his rhetorical question, which I believe was what Gabe was alluding to. V'hagam da kelim he megalim es ha'or. Wait a minute. Don't the kelim also reveal the light? The restriction itself says, I can't give you as much, but I'm giving you. So isn't there an aspect of gilui, revelation, to the kelim themselves? That's his rhetorical question. And he said, and to strengthen it, he gives us an example. Listen to this example. It's a nice example. The letters of logic. We form letters in our mind for every piece of logic. What do these letters do? These containers do? They're megales ha-seichel. They reveal the seichel. In other words, if we wouldn't have the osios ha-seichel, you got to concentrate, guys. This is some good chassidus now here. If you don't have the osios ha-seichel, the letters of the logic would not make sense. Because the compartmentalized logic, as it's expressed through letters, gives it form and idea. So, Oisius HaSeichel, the letters of logic, are megales HaSeichel. They don't restrict the Seichel, they actually make the Seichel understandable, which we call, Yoni, in the language of Chassidus and the Moshel over here, megalim. They're a revelation of the idea. You can have the brightest idea. If you don't have the words for the idea and you try to express it, you sound like a lunatic, a meshuganer. And you could be a genius, and in your head it's clear, but you're missing the oisios. And by the way, there are some people that have this issue. They're brilliant and geniuses, but they don't have the oisios. It's a talent, it's a skill to develop the oisios for seichel. So, v'hagam da kelim he megalim u'kamaimer, and there's a saying used, osios machkimos. You know why you have to look into a siddur when you daven? The Lubavitcher Rebbe, he always looked in the siddur when he made a bracha achroina. Look at the videos, and trust me, he knew it by heart. When you learn, why? Oisios, the letters themselves, machkimos, they make you smarter. In other words, the container, the vessel, one second, the container, the vessel, is not only a hagbala, a limitation, but it's a revelation. Yes, Hillel.
Where is that quote from? Osios.
I think it's either it's in a Sefer of Kabbalah, either Sefer Yetzirah or one of those Svarim. I'm not sure. I don't know. I don't think it's a Chazal, but I'll have to look it up. But there, I don't think it's a Gemara. I think it's but I have to find out. It doesn't give a source. But there is such a saying. I grew up with it. Yeah. Oisios machkimois.
Rabbi, one more time. Finish your sentence for me. The letters of logic are misgale what?
Are megale the logic.
Megale
the words, the letters reveal the logic. Without the words which are limiting, right? If I say, come here, those words, Avi, means come here and not go there. So the words are limiting your understanding of what I'm saying. Come here is come here, not go there. So on one hand, the words limit what I'm saying. At the very same time, they reveal what I want. Come here. Let's continue. As we see in actuality, by reading the letters, the words, and focusing on the words, you comprehend it properly. Very important, fellas. Chevra, very important line. And this is something that Western thinking, in my humble opinion, doesn't do because it's a different mindset. The Torah approach to learning is to look at the words, focus and concentrate on the words. And I don't mean, abracadabra, I don't mean that. I mean, like it says, Liolom. When you learn something, look at the word and think about what the word means and what it implies. Iyun. Study the words. Say the words and study the words. The words themselves will add clarity and expansion to your brain. You hear that? That's why we say, Hillel, oisiyos machkimois. The oisiyos make you smarter. So put your energy into the oisiyos. That's why another reason when we call to the Torah, right, Moshe? When you give an aliyah to someone, they should say along and look into the Torah what's being read. Oisiyos machkimois. So you call someone up. He's never been called to the Torah. He doesn't, you give him an aliyah. He doesn't know his father's day, his mother's name, and you say, "Did Baba," and you give him a bracha. And someone says, "Why are you calling him up?" He tells you afterwards, "Gabbai, what kind of gabbai are you? Give it to, like yesterday, a shishi, a shvi man, a shishi and a shlishi man. What are you giving it to some Tom, Dick, and Harry? You got it all wrong, my friend. It's not about big shot at the Torah, how much you learned or how much you know. It's about oisiyos machkimois. And by him being called for an aliyah, he gets an aliyah and he looks into the words, whether he knows what the words means, Torah Shabbat, or doesn't know, the oisiyos impact him, and that's his beginning to grow further. Oisiyos machkimois. Let's continue.
Rabbi, question.
Yes.
Rabbi, question. Is that the reason why that in yeshivas and schools that even if a person doesn't necessarily understand what they're saying in the tefillah, they tell them to learn, to say the Hebrew, the Lashon Kodesh, not the English?
It's part of it. Good question. It's part of it, Yoni. It's part of it. There's another reason, and if you think about it, I think it makes sense. You don't want to train a child or a person to go to other sources to find their connection to Hashem. Once they have the connection, you can taste other sources, because if you're strong in who you are, you're not going to be fathomed by other sources. Now I understand we're talking here about, let's say, reading in Hebrew versus reading in Yiddish, Spanish, French, or English. But there's something to the oisiyos that Chazal chose. We believe that the Chazal, especially in Tefillah, it's the Anshe Knesses HaGdoila, the men of the Great Assembly, who chose those words and those words only. And that's why, just for the record, yesterday we spoke about, I think Gabe asked about what part of tefillah is the time to, if you want to say a prayer, and I said Shema Koleinu. But I have to tell you, since we're speaking about it now, a day later, that in some traditions, like in Chabad, we really don't do that. We don't add to the tefillah. You're allowed to, but I was taught that, if you could avoid doing that, don't do it. Because the words that the Chazal chose for the Shmoneh Esrei are powerful enough, and it's their words, and they were holy and tzaddikim, and if you concentrate on those words and put your thought into their words, it will ascend up, and it's going to ascend up to the right place because it's coming from Chazal. Whereas your words are your words. So you might mean well, but maybe you didn't go, maybe you're not prepared today. Who knows, So going back to your question, Yoni, Oisius Machkimois has two reasons. So the training in the yeshiva, as you say, is that the letters themselves, in Yiddish there's an expression, the Werter allein, Werter means words, allein means alone. The Werter allein, the words alone, Zenen Zis, are sweet. In other words, you should come to a place where you want to kiss the letters because they're so special, they're so holy, they're so beautiful. Now, Yoni, like I've told you several times, and it's still worth mentioning because one should learn the meaning of davening. This takes a little time, but you could learn the meaning. So, because we daven every day, so that when you have your siddur, and you look into your siddur, and you train yourself to look into the siddur and say the words, I'm telling you, the time when I do that, my davening is enhanced. When I don't do that, and I rattle off Ashrei by heart, it's a different davening. So we train the children, and you mentioned the yeshivas, we train them in such a way to focus on the words. Of course, if one doesn't know Hebrew, they should do it in English. And there's certain parts of davening where it's better to do it in the language that you understand. But that's another discussion. Discuss it with your local rabbi. Let's continue. So he says, so the Zeo Klolos Hahefesh Ben Dibur L'Ksiva. He says this is the general difference between speaking and writing. The B'dibur, when you speak, Hine im mikabel divrei harav, if you listen to your teacher, the Yedei Oisam, and you know the words that he uses, also Yochel Lilmad Oisam, then you can master them, learn them. What about im shachach divrei harav? As soon as we get off this shir and you forget the words that I used, Oz hare eina yodeas inyan klal. You don't know the idea at all, because a teacher who teaches properly uses specific words to express the ideas that he teaches. So in other words, when you hear words from a teacher, any teacher who's teaching properly, if you remember those words, you know what he really wants, and if not, you don't. Conversely, words that are written, the written word, the words themselves remind you about the idea. The words are a reminder to the idea that the words are supposed to communicate. So we're going to stop here. So here he gives an example, the difference between Oisius Haksiva, letters, words written, and Oisius Hadibur, words that are said. Words that are said, I'm saying now things, so what you remember of what I said will remind you about the ideas that I taught this morning. Those things you won't remember, You won't remember those ideas. What if I gave you a transcript now of everything I said? What do? You pick up the transcript, you read what I said, and you say, this is what he elaborated on these words, and I understand it. So, what do we see? Why is he giving us this mashal, Yoni? Why is he giving us this example? Because this example shows that in words themselves, there's a difference between the spoken word and the written word. I tell people who, have information to share about the different historical things that I'm researching, I ask them if it's preferable for them to write it to me. Not that, the fact is that I don't have time to listen to everyone because I wouldn't have any time left to write and to research, but also the written word is your word. So if I end up quoting you said it, and I cited it. So if there's an issue with it, go back to you. Don't go back to me. I mean, at the end of the day, I have to take responsibility if it's my work, my book. My name is on it. Whether I cite you, I don't cite you, I take I'll be blamed. I'll be responsible. But outside of that, which is the truth, outside of that, it's your word. And your word, you can and should write the way you want it to be said. In other words, like this. This is something, it's hard sometimes to do. If you don't want someone or something to be understood about you in a certain way, don't write it that way. Because if you write it that way and it gets out, that's the way it's going to be. I'll tell you a story without names because it's not proper. I asked a certain prominent rabbi several years ago to endorse one of my books, and he was very interested in that book that I wrote. The book was Rav and Rebbe, on Rabbi Soloveitchik and the Rebbe. And he, you hear this? And he likes Chabad. And he's a known rabbi, and I think one of you here on the listening knows him personally anyway. And nothing. So he said to me, before I endorse it, I want to see what I'm endorsing. I said, sure. So I sent him a copy of the manuscript, and he looked at various parts, and he said, yeah, I like what you wrote. There was a controversial issue that he was referring to. Actually, it was the book, The Real Shlomo. It was about Rav Shlomo Carlebach. I take it back. It wasn't about Rav and Rebbe. It was about Rav Shlomo. Because of all the, bad press about Rav Shlomo, so he, wanted to find, he told me, I'd like to have one book finally that really opens up the issue, isn't embarrassed, but does it in a respectful way, and brings it to the table. And he read my manuscript, and he said, I really like what you wrote. On one hand, you brought the issue to the table. On the other hand, you were very respectful, and you explained all sides and all the issues. This dialogue that I'm telling you about was done in email. All of a sudden, I get an email from someone, I forget now who, I'll remind myself at some point, and he says, you're, what's the word in English? You're buying off. What's the better word? You're basically, excuse the, what?
Bribing?
Bribing, or, you're, excuse the expression, you're in bed with the rabbi, and the rabbi's in bed with you. And he's about to give you an approbation, a haskama, because you and him are tight. He likes Lubavitch, you're a Chabadnik, and he says, I'm going to blow the whistle on him. Me, I'm not a real, organization man, belonging, but he was, or is. And he blew the whistle on him. And I know. Oh, now I know who it was. There was a big troublemaker to the Orthodox community, to the Frum community. Baruch Hashem, I think someone actually paid him off to stop his blog. So,
Schechter?
What?
Zalman Schechter?
No, I don't want to say any names, so don't ask me, please.
Sorry.
Not appropriate. It wasn't Zalman. No, it wasn't Zalman. So Zalman wouldn't do that. It wasn't him. No. So he went and put on his blog a copy of the emails. What happened? By mistake, I gave one kvetch, one press of the button to the wrong button, and it ended up going to him somehow. And he took it and he publicized it. And there was nothing wrong in our correspondence. But if you wanted to pick a fight and you wanted to say that this community rabbi is giving approbations because he's, get the word, he's bought off, he has a favorite. And he called me up, the rabbi, and he says, as much as I would love to endorse your book, I can't. And he basically was, blackmailed. He was blackmailed into a corner, and he had to, and his administration got wind of it, and they said you have to make a statement that you retract. So what did that show me? It showed what you write, you have to think of it this way. Will my writing be a tool for my enemy? Unfortunate, this is the world we're in. And if you cannot say that, don't write it. Or write it in a way where an enemy of yours, or someone who's an enemy of orthodoxy, well, you know what I mean. Someone who wants to make a mess and has an axe to grind won't be able to use it. And I've discussed this with lawyers, big lawyers in Washington, friends, people I learn with, he says it's the same way today in the business world. Don't write anything that you will regret later because that could be used against you. So when we're learning here about the Oisius Haksiva, here he's talking about the virtue of Oisius Haksiva. That Oisius Haksiva remind you of what the idea is. So he's speaking about the positive quality. So it just reminded me, and I'm sharing with you, that it can work the other way too. The point being that what's written is a reminder of who you are, even though maybe you're not that. Maybe that's not you. But you said it a certain way, then that's what it is. So we have to be very, very careful. And I talk to myself. The Rebbe always quoted the Tzemach Tzedek. Tzemach Tzedek said, something that is in writing, Avi, is for generations. It's for generations. Every time I write, I think about this. I don't write just for now. My writing, I'm not saying my writing, is for 100 years from now. After my 180 years of my life. Someone's going to pick up that book and he's going to say, so Dalfin, what did you say? And he's going to read it. And I have to write it that way today. Based on what I want that person 100 years from now to understand. And that's an achrayus. It's a great responsibility. And in a way, it's the same for every email and every piece of writing. Although, we don't put as much thought into it. Okay, Chevra. I hope that the last lesson, the last message is clear and important, because we always like to walk away with something very practical. And this lifetime experience taught me a big lesson. Big lesson. Have a great day. Shalom. Take care. Bye-bye.
Good day, everyone.